Hi there YouTube, welcome to another bolt action related video. Today we have a video that has been a long time coming, and it's basically, let me move the camera a little bit, reinforcements for Japanese basically. I've had basically got 3 items for you today, 2 vehicles and an infantry squad. And I'm going to basically talk about my sort of plans for the Japanese army, going way back to sort of my Grand Army update and how it was at that particular point, and the fact that I've actually had a lot of stuff in reserve, and during that sort of period, the only real thing that I kind of added to my army was my Kuragane recon jeep, and you know, I'm kind of at a point. I was kind of at a point, you know, in the sort of Christmas season where I painted my French army in relatively quick time. For me, I've had, you know, normally I'm sort of plagued with sort of health problems, and again I have been, but luckily they haven't really affected my painting. So I've been able to get a lot of painting in over the last sort of couple of months, and like I say, I've had particularly 2 of these items for over a year and a half, and this particular infantry squad I've had sitting in reserve for about a year. So let's get on. Little bit of sort of information. I basically, probably towards the later part of last year, kind of got into the mindset that the main thing that my Japanese army was lacking was infantry. So I really wanted to come up with some kind of plan to bolster the infantry of my initial unit, which I believe has only got like 4 units. And the Japanese are one of those armies that kind of benefit from having lots of infantry, so that because they're quite a sort of an aggressive infantry-based force. Of course, the other things I kind of wanted to add were at least another tank, and of course an artillery piece. And I do actually have the 105 howitzer here, sitting in its blister, waiting to be done. I think the main thing that's kind of put me off of starting this is the actual sort of difficulty of actually building the actual gun itself. It looks, I've had a few sort of dry fits, and to tell the truth, I haven't got a freaking clue. So I'm going to have to do some internet research before I can stick that together. And I've also kind of have to double check that I've actually got the right pieces, because I've heard that some people end up getting pieces of German howitzer in their pack that obviously don't fit. The other sort of metal piece that I've got is this sort of Baron Nishi figure. That's not really kind of, I had no real plans of adding this guy to my army, but I managed to get him for like £3, and although I'm not a fan of painting horses, I am kind of, you know, I like to improve my horse painting technique, because I've got a couple of horse-heavy saga armies to complete in the near future. So I kind of, all the sort of horse practice I can get in, the better. And at the end of the day, it's quite a nice figure, sort of quite noble, sort of a Japanese, high-ranking Japanese officer on a horse, and he can always sort of be brought in if I really need him, but he's really more of a sort of showpiece. The other things that I kind of have got from my Japanese army are a couple of boxes of plastic infantry. The first being the box of normal plastic infantry that I actually got free with my bolt action 2 book. And the second, a box of Special Naval Landing Force that I've had laying around for 6 or 7 months, which I am actually going to get around to do to help bolster my infantry, my overall infantry force of my Japanese army. the kind of rough idea is to basically have maybe another 2 platoons that are heavily infantry based. One of Special Naval Landing Force and one of regular infantry. These guys here are summer uniform equipped Japanese troops by Warlord. And these guys are probably going to be added to one of my normal platoons. I haven't 100% decided because I have to kind of totally reorder my army. Like I say, I'll kind of decide eventually, once I've worked out what I'm going to actually build out of the infantry box sets, my exact army structure. But this video is about the new things I've added to my army, not the things that are coming. So we'll start off with this squad here. These guys are a really nice unit. I definitely recommend anyone who's got a Japanese army to at least get one blister of these guys, because A, you can get them fairly cheap if you look around, and B, it's just a different uniform scheme to paint over the sort of basic the basic Japanese scheme that I used, and a little bit of experimentation on the uniform colour again. Ended up using German camo beige over a sort of khaki base coat, and I think it looks pretty good. It takes a shade of I used Agrax Earthshade for sort of like a sort of shading wash, and it really does take that wash really well. It goes into all sort of nooks and crannies and really makes the figures turn out pretty good for you know, even just painting them very, very basically. You'll just get that sort of really nice sort of shaded look. They weren't too difficult to paint. Obviously they're primarily one colour, and they also have very sort of limited belt kit. I've actually got a piece, there's a piece of grass or something on the back of his ammo pouch. There we go, it's gone now. That always annoys me when you put when you flock the base. You always get like odd bits of grass like sticking off the figure, and sometimes they're not always that easy to see until you decide to put them in front of the camera, and then they all appear. Like I say, this guy's pretty basically armed. He's the sergeant of the squad. He is literally just got his basic belt gear, and his water bottle, and his rifle. And you can see he's in a sort of typical NCO pose. And again, using my typical random name generators, this guy was named, and he's got his rank. And the Japanese insignia for a sergeant is the red rectangle, which denotes infantry, a yellow stripe, and a white star. Next, we have the corporal. So this is again a kind of quite nice posed figure. I put a sort of a shouting head on his shoulders. He again is pretty lightly equipped up. The only difference being that he's got his haversack with him. And this was the first figure that I was testing colours out on. Again, I think he came out pretty cool. He is, if we look on the bottom of his base, a corporal, like I said, and he's got his name. And the corporal insignia is, the sergeant is actually 2 stars on the yellow stripe, and the corporal is, you probably can't see it, although it is actually quite clear on the actual figure itself. It's a yellow stripe with a single star. Got a yellowy gold star actually. Next up we have the machine gun team. These guys are not a massive fan of this particular machine gunner as pose. I'm not a massive fan of the knife being mounted on the LMG. Of course it's the Type 99. But this guy is was part of the sort of charge, and was obviously taking ground to set the machine gun up. It's, as far as sort of prone type position figures go, it's not too bad. But as you all know, I'm not a massive fan of sort of prone figures in general. But I was happy that he kind of fitted on his stand quite well, and I didn't have to sort of upsize his base, because of course the trouble with Japanese is you don't really want to slap your LMGs onto cavalry bases if possible, because you're talking the sort of space of 4 or 5 guys in the space of just those 2 bases, so when you put them into buildings and stuff, it kind of creates problems. This is the loader. I can't see any figures that seem to be designated as the loaders, so I decided to choose this, again, sort of semi-prone guy. He fits on the base nice, and let me just bring in the machine gunner again. You can see that I forgot to actually go through the rank of these guys. This guy is a superior private, and the assistant to the LMG is a first class private. So some pretty high ranked infantry there in the LMG team. Next up, we'll start with the regular infantry guys. So here we have quite a nice sort of charging position guy. Again, I chose a sort of a shouting type face expression. You didn't get much choice in head sculpts with these guys. You basically got, I think you got 3 sprues of 4 heads, and they're basically all the same, with possibly one variation, because I've got one guy who's got spectacles, and I only got one of those, so it must have been literally three sprues of the same, 1 sprue different. This guy has the rank of private first class, and again he's got the very light belt gear along with his water bottle and haversack, and of course all these guys have got the sort of the Japanese soft cap. Let's move on. So here is another infantryman, just in a sort of a running pose, but without his bayonet on this time, and his hand is kind of holding his bayonet from sort of swinging around, which is kind of cool. And again, you'll see this head sculpt pop up quite a bit, because this was more or less the most numerous head sculpt that came on the sort of head sprues. And if we look at his rank, he is a second class private, which is the sort of lowest rank private that you can get. Next up we have another second class private, and the names of these guys of course were done on the random name generator, like I said. This actually isn't the guy that I thought he was. I thought I'm looking for the guy with the spectacles. This is another one of those same heads, and again there's a piece of grass really annoyingly sitting across the front of his cap. I think it's gone now. Yeah. And quite a nice posed figure. Again, another piece of grass there. There we go. Again, very basic gear. This guy just having the water bottle and belt kit, although he does have his bayonet in his scabbard, which is good. And this guy, as I've already shown you his rank. Next up we have another sort of charging guy. This is, I believe, exactly the same pose as you've already seen. He has again a sort of shouting face pose, and again the sort of minus the haversack sort of belt kit, and a pretty nice pose. And if we look rank wise, second class private. And finally the last two, again a sort of advancing private. This guy's the guy with the spectacles. Only got one of those heads, so presumably that particular sprue of 4 heads has got some slight variation. Although, to tell the truth, that is, as far as I know, there's only like literally 4 heads out of all sort of 12 sprues. There's the shouting head, there's the sort of the plain expression head. There's one head of this sort of spectacle guy, who is rank-wise a private second class, so bog standard private. And quite a nice pose, holding his holding his bayonet again to stop it from swinging around. I suppose this guy could have been used as the machine gun loader, but I kind of preferred the one that was sort of on the ground too. And then finally we have another sort of charging figure. I believe this is the third of the same position, with again that same sort of head. And again the haversack and water bottle along with his belt kit. And rank wise, this guy is a first class private. And that's the end of that particular squad. So quite a fast run through these guys. I really do like this infantry squad. Like I said, they're by Warlord. And I got them for a really good price. I can't remember where I got them from, but I think they cost me like £7. Which is not bad for a sort of a blister of 10 guys. And like I said, they're sort of, I'm probably going to put these guys in with one of my regular army platoons, because I kind of want to bolster those up to have sort of roughly maybe 4 infantry units each. So you know, I'll definitely have a use for these guys, and like I say, they're quite enjoyable to paint, although very, very easy. So that's the Warlord Japanese summer uniform infantry squad. Next up, we're going to go for the other 2 items, and starting off, we have quite an odd vehicle. We have a Japanese armoured personnel carrier. This I didn't even know Japanese ever had until I sort of came across the model. It is a Type 1 Ho-Key carrier. This is a late war vehicle. We're talking sort of 44, 45. It never really entered sort of mass production. I mean, you can, if you look for them, find sort of old photos of them, but like I say, there's never many of them around, and it's certainly something that until I actually came across the model on eBay just by fluke. I can't remember the name of the actual company that makes it, but it wasn't very expensive. I think it was about £10 here in England. It came in 2 pieces, literally the open-topped version and a sort of a canvas cover that you can put on if you want. And I added the pinnacle machine gun myself. I couldn't come across any sort of reference material which showed where the machine guns were actually mounted on this particular vehicle. So I used a little bit of creative license. According to the rules, you can have a machine gun on the front and a machine gun on the rear. So with that sort of information, you think, oh well, you know, maybe they're sort of, you know, if you take the top off, sort of like mount one here or here, and put one on the back sort of here. But then you think, well, what happens if you've got the top up? You know, you can kind of imagine sort of losing the sort of rear one, but you know, it's not a very sort of a tactical idea to sort of actually lose all firepower just because you've got the sort of roof canvas cover on. So what I decided to do was, I noticed that there's a hatch on the top here. So I thought, well, that would be a great position to put a forward-facing pinnacle-mounted machine gun, so I'll put it there. And basically, the machine gun is a slightly modified Type 99. It kind of looks very similar to my my Italian Breeder 30 that I did for my M1340s. And I basically, you know, took the Type 99 and basically armoured vehicled it. You know, it's like, if you think about the sort of a machine gun that's designed for a tank, it doesn't really need a butt, it doesn't really need carrying handles, it doesn't really need to be quite as long barreled as the sort of infantry version, because it's sort of hanging off a vehicle. You don't want it to get caught in, you know, caught in foliage or anything like that. So I kind of, you know, slightly shortened the barrel, cut the rifle butt off, and again using that sort of piece of metal sprue that came with the sprue that held the Japanese heads, I just flattened off a sort of a triangular piece and made it into a pinnacle mount. And I think sort of looks wise, it kind of looks pretty good there. And you you know, I was pretty happy with how it turned out. Camouflage scheme wise, I decided to go for a later war camouflage scheme. Because obviously this is kind of a later war vehicle, and really this sort of colour scheme here is a sort of like a 1943-ish camouflage colour scheme. So in reality, it might not have ever actually been in these colours, but I do like this camouflage scheme. It's more modern than the original sort of yellow cross camouflage scheme that my original Type 97's in. And I didn't really want to paint these in that same camo scheme because it's kind of like obsolete. So I thought, you know, well, I'll paint them up in a slightly different colour scheme because chances are I'll be in one of my different platoons, so it won't really make any difference. And of course, I used my supply of Warlord vehicle transfers, and again, I had to use a little bit of creative license on placing transfers on these guys. So it's probably not 100% historically correct, but it kind of looks pretty good, and at the end of the day, I'm very happy with it, and that's what counts, I suppose. So that is the Type 1. Keep forgetting the name of it. The Type 1 Hoki carrier. Okay, so a worthy addition to my Japanese. Next up, we have the final item. This is the item that I've had in my collection for the best part of a year and a half. It is another tank, or in this particular case, a tank destroyer. And actually, the sort of story behind getting this particular piece was actually a kind of a mistake. I kind of really wanted to get what was it called? The Type 3 medium tank, which is kind of like a very, very late war tank armed with a 75mm gun, and has one forward-facing MMG and a turret, of course. And I ended up, for some reason, either ordering this by mistake or thinking this was that particular tank, and when it came, it wasn't. So when it came, I was, after your sort of initial disappointment of realising that you've ordered something wrong, you kind of look at it and see what you got, and it ended up being a Type 3 Ho-Ni 3 tank destroyer, which is basically a more modern version of the original Type 1 Ho-Ni tank destroyer, which was basically kind of open topped, with, I believe it even didn't have doors on the back. It was literally completely open, and the Type 3 basically enclosed that particular area and enclosed it into a superstructure, and it ended up being sort of like one of the most improved sort of tank destroyers the Japanese ever used. And again, it was kind of, you know, really only ever used in sort of the late war. Sort of we're talking 44 and 45, and it was only really used around the sort of home island. So again, it never really saw any sort of full-on sort of combat service, or if it did, very, very few of them actually did. But model-wise, it's a very nice looking model. It's got the I thought it had the Type 97 hull, but I think it's actually got a slightly different hull. And of course, the sort of the detail on the hull is up to the sort of Warlord standards. And you can see it's got this really nice 75mm gun, which is something really good for the Japanese. They just don't have tanks with powerful guns, and the only thing this is really lacking is some kind of machine gun. It doesn't even have like a pencil machine gun, which you'd think that they would think about putting on, because obviously with that sort of open turret area there, you could easily slap a pencil mounted machine gun on and give yourself some extra anti-infantry cover. There's the two main doors at the back where the crew would get in, and the open hatch, which can be folded up to create a sort of gun shield, And the thing I liked most about this kit was the fact that it came with these conjoined crew here. There's tank commander and the gunner, sort of side by side at slightly different heights, which I really liked. And when I stuck this tank together, I kind of started to fall in love with it. Obviously, sort of a tank destroyer is designed to zoom around the battlefield and to try and get sort of advantageous shots on enemy armour. And I don't think this particular tank is particularly fast, but it's, you know, it's certainly got a gun that can stand up to certainly Shermans and Stuarts. So you know, quite a nice vehicle. I certainly could find a use for it, and again I kind of went for this sort of I believe it's like possibly Guadalcanal area type camouflage. I can't exactly remember. I got the camouflage scheme from my Japanese tank books. I'll just actually look that up and tell you exactly where it comes from, because I probably got it wrong. It's actually from the Philippines, that particular camouflage scheme, in December 44. So it's kind of like a late war scheme. Actually, no. Yes, it is. Yeah, same place. December 44. Let me show you the picture. There it is. This is actually a slightly different tank. I believe this is the Type 1. So this is the version that the Type 3 was a modification of. And you can see that the whole structure is shorter, and it's actually got the gun sticking out the back, and all this area here was open. I don't think it had a roof, although it might have had a short roof, maybe a half roof, but all of this part here was open, and it obviously didn't even have the doors. And you can see that the Type 3 basically increases the size of the rear turret to enclose the gun, and obviously the turret top roof has been fully enclosed too, to give that crew that extra bit of protection. I actually gave it different markings, different tank regiment, and overall I think this tank came out really cool. I really do like the colour scheme, and I really do like the actual commander figures, and you know, it's a welcome addition to my army. And after getting over the initial sort of disappointment of finding out that you actually ordered the wrong tank, but you know, eventually I may get round to getting one of those Type 4s, because I do actually quite like the look of them. Again, they're kind of late war, so you're kind of sort of breaking history by adding them to your army, really. I mean, theoretically, you're kind of breaking history adding this to your army, because you know, these were only really positioned around the home islands. But you know, at the end of the day, it's a game, so we can all sort of enjoy it. So that is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please feel free to comment, and remember to subscribe to keep notifications going when I do produce new videos. I've been on a bit of a run of them lately, but you know, they could suddenly not appear, and you know, none could appear for several months, or like in this month, I believe I've done over the last couple of months maybe 6 videos, which is pretty good for me. Okay, so until next time, catch you later.